Most people in their 30s and 40s have no idea if they're saving enough for retirement. Now, whether retirement for you means traveling the mountains, moving to the beach, or just staying at home and doing as you please with who you want, it's going to be something that grows on people as they get older, that they're further than retirement than their parents were. Now, I know this because I work with a lot of their parents, and I see the different ways that their parents think as compared to their kids. So in your 30s and 40s, as you know, this is generally the time where you start to make more money, but it's the time of your life where, of course, your expenses rise with your increase in income. So today I'm going to give you a few thoughts, a few general guidelines around how much you should be saving based off of how much you're making. But then more importantly, I want to move into an actual visual of it's going to be a realistic example, but it's a fictional couple in what this scenario actually looks like played out. In that video, I'll include inconsistent income like RSUs, but in this you could assume if you make commission or if you make bonuses, something that's inconsistent in the income that a lot of you in your 30s and 40s who are high earners are seeing in today's world. So you don't need a finance degree for any of this. I'm not going to use complex formulas or anything other than just walking you through how I would walk through this plan with someone in their 30s and 40s with higher income or looking to move into a position of higher net worth, and how we would approach this. So fair disclosure with all these videos, of course, they are just educational. They're not a recommendation. They're not advice, but I would advise you speaking with a financial planner that you trust, because this is the time of your life where things start to get more complex. So anytime we add complexity, you really can go two routes. You can kind of let that complexity build up and only let it snowball and get worse, or of course, you can hire someone and hopefully they can help you with your situation. And I know that's tooting my own horn, but with all that said, let's dive into the video. Okay, so the first and probably most important thing that we need to cover is who we're using today for our example. So I have Mark and Mary Mozart. I know it's a very classy last name, no pun intended, but they are 40 and 37 years old. I have Mark working, I believe for this example at Oracle, but I'm assuming any high-tech firm. And then I have his wife, Mary, working at a teacher, living in New York and filing their taxes married. So for this example, we're just going to say that they have two kids, Mark Jr. and Molly, keeping everything with the M's here. And I know it's going to be remarkably difficult to know when you plan on retiring and if you plan on moving in retirement, but we're just using a base case here. So we're saying that this couple that lives in New York is planning on retiring at 65 and Mary at 62, and then they're going to need their money for 33 years in retirement, and they're planning to move from New York to Florida. Stop me if you ever heard someone moving from New York to Florida in retirement or even in the winter when it gets cold. I know how you snowbirds work, but that wouldn't be until Mark's retirement, so not moving until then. Okay, so now if we look at a breakdown of their net worth, you'll see investment assets wise, so 401k, brokerage account. I'll show you that breakdown here in a moment briefly. We're nearly at about 400,000. Other assets of 600,000, that just includes cars and homes. And combined, of course, we have a total asset of $995,000. But remember, with net worth, we have to subtract out our liabilities. So any auto loans, any loans that we have on our home, like a mortgage, that gets subtracted. So a total net worth of $700,000 here. Okay, so as I mentioned, what that is broken down to is $265,000. That is in between a 401k and a 403b. And then we have $70,000 in a joint brokerage account. Remember, that's just a non-retirement account when we compare that to a 401k or a 403b. So both of these can be good to have depending on your situation, but for the most part, I see more people have a retirement plan than a taxable or brokerage account is the technical name for it. I have them have a 529 for their kids of $25,000, so not anything substantial, and then a health savings account and HSA through work of $35,000. And like I said, home value of about $600,000. Don't know where they're getting a $600,000 house in New York, but that's what we have. And then, of course, the two loans that I mentioned. Okay, so very well, you might see yourself in a lot of Mark and Mary's situation, but I know the title of this video is being able to decide how much you should save by the time you're 30 and 40. So before I get into the actual plan here, let me walk you through just a simple kind of general rule of thumb when we talk about how much you should be saving. And again, keep in mind, I'm a guy on YouTube, so I don't know your situation, but a lot of times what people think is if they save 15% of their income, they're automatically okay for retirement. Now, very popular people like Dave Ramsey have spread this message, and it does work for a lot of folks. But unfortunately, if you're in your 30s or if you're in your 40s or if you're watching this in your 50s, that timeline until retirement or when you want to use that money has been shrunk, right? A lot of people he's talking to with that are in their 20s. And because of that, they have this long timeline for it to compound. But unfortunately, when you have less time, you have to jump that rate up, right? So it's going to depend on your income here. And let me lay it out on screen here just so we're all on the same page. So if generally speaking, if you're at about $150,000 of income, I'm going to say that about 20 to 25% might make sense. If we move to 200,000 in income, about 25 to 30%, and then 300,000 plus as a household, save 30 plus percent. Now I know those numbers might seem high. It's easy for me to say, hey, just save double what you're saving right now if you're making 15%. But remember, you're probably in your peak earning years right now if you're in your 40s and like Mary and Mark are going to be in this example. So you have to take advantage. You have to strike while the iron is hot. The other thing I'll point out, and maybe this is more, not a red flag, but something I really disagree with what planners do in meetings, is they're very conservative in how much their clients are going to spend in retirement. So you personally, if you're making $300,000 right now and you think you're going to move into retirement and spend $70,000 a year, I just frankly disagree with you. And it's not that I disagree with you because I think you're living your life wrong or you should change it. It's just we have to be realistic with the numbers. So if you're going to plan to live a certain way in retirement, you have to start saving to live that way in retirement, okay? So enough badgering on that. Let's move into the plan. Okay, so everything I just shared with you before that last segment is rolled up, and they're saying that Mark and Mary are going to retire at 65, and this is their probability of making it to the end of their retirement without having to run out of money, essentially. So 750 out of 1,000 times is their confidence score. Now that's pretty good. They fall slightly into the green bar, and I'm going to walk you through what our assumptions here just briefly, and then I'll show you what happens when you mix in inconsistent income like RSUs or bonuses or income that's a little bit more realistic, and it helps the plan out a little bit. But for this example, and I promise, like I said, no deep formulas here. I'm going to keep this really simple. We're assuming a 6.8% rate of return before and after retirement. The reason that we assume the same rate over time is because that's the annual average. That's not saying, hey, the S&P is up 20% this year, so we're automatically just going to throw 20% in your plan, right? That would be very stupid to be academic. But the one thing I do want to point out here is that inflation is at 2.2%. So that's something that you're going to have to decide on your own. I personally think that's a little bit low, especially for today's world. If that was more like 2.8 or 3%, you would see a little bit different part there. But remember, Mark and Mary retiring at 65 and 62 and living until 92 and 94, spending $120,000 in retirement. Okay, so let's briefly jump into what they die with, to put it bluntly, and then we will get to the next plan. Okay, so this is that plan drawn out over the course of their retirement. So as you can see, it's 2025, so they're not retiring anytime soon. In fact, they're not going to be retiring until 2050. So by the time 2050 comes around, that $120,000 is $250,000. Inflation, like I said, is a big deal. And as I was mentioning a moment ago when we were talking about how much you need to be saving in retirement, that number is not going to look as tidy and clean as you might expect. But because they've been saving well, what I have for them is about $3.6 million that they're entering retirement with. And keep in mind here, guys, I don't actually anticipate every single one of you moving and going, I'm going to start investing 30% because this guy on YouTube told me to. So even in what I have them adding, what I have them saving, and then contributing to their 401ks, to their 403bs, and so forth, I only have at about 15%, right? So at the bottom rung of some of the numbers that I was giving you earlier. So that should maybe give you some confidence in terms of this plan. Okay, so for Mark and Mary, they retire when they're 65 and 62, like I mentioned, with $3.6 million to their name. They're living off of about $250,000 at that time, at the start of retirement. And then if we fast forward their life and all these good things happen with their grandkids and whatnot, they die with around nearly $5 million, right? And that is due to their Social Security planning. That's due to tax planning. That's due to a lot of things that's going to be helpful to them in retirement. That's just not moving into retirement and automatically they're going to somehow die with an extra $2 million, right? That's going to take a lot to get there. but that's what we have. Okay, so now briefly I'm going to jump into the other plan. I'll show you some inconsistent income and how that impacts the plan and how you can plan around it, and then I'll have you on your way. So let's start with RSUs. And like I said at the start of the video, you don't have to get RSUs for this to be relevant to you. This can be a bonus, this can be commission, but it's just planning inconsistent income into your life and how that's going to impact your plan. So let's say that Mark gets about $250,000 of RSUs over the next 4 years. If you're not familiar with what an RSU is, it's taxed the exact same way as income, but it vests over time, unlike income, okay? So let's say in 2024, Oracle has decided to give Mark 1,500 shares of their company over 4 years. Now, all you can understand this to mean if you don't have RSUs is your company has agreed to give you $250,000 over 4 years, and they're just going to divide that into 4, right? So if we look at the actual summary of what that looks like as it vests out, 2025, it gets 375 and so forth. So you can view this the same exact way if you make a commission or if you make a bonus, because it's taxed the same way. But being specific to RSUs for a moment, one thing I would be kind of unrealistic and foolish to leave out is how tax impacts that. And again, the same thing for your regular income, because you're not going to get the full amount of the RSU that the company provides to you. So I want you to focus on this middle bar here, and this is going to represent the cash value that Mark is going to get here. So let's say for this year's RSUs, it's worth about $82,500. When you apply taxes, 28%, which is most of the time what your company is going to do, they're going to sell shares in order to pay this tax, even though a lot of times they'll come up short. The real number that Mark is going to get is $59,000 here. So that's something very important, because a lot of people get thrown off whenever they get, $82,000 of RSUs and they only end up with about a third of that. You can thank our friendly government for that. The other thing I'll point out here just briefly is if you're anticipating getting a larger bonus, or you're anticipating getting more from the stock because it appreciates over time, you can see how that number changes. So even with taxes, you can see over time the differences between these numbers. But let's not sit too long on this. I know this is a lot. So okay, now you can see that we've made a significant jump in confidence from the last plan to this plan, and that's just from 4 years of bonuses or RSUs, right? We're up to 82% now, and everything is the exact same. I'm not pulling a fast one on you. Same returns, okay, same time of retirement, same expectation in retirement. We're even taking Social Security at the same time. But let's look a little bit deeper into what that actually means. But we see when we get to the ending portfolio that we have nearly $11 million saved. Now think about that for a moment. You have $11 million that you die with, which that's up to you if that sounds like something you want to do, compared to, I believe it was nearly 5 in the last example. So you can see the compound effect that saving earlier has and the compound effect that earning earlier has, because what we do with our money today has great implications on the future. So guys, I'm going to cut this video off here because I don't want to get too far into the numbers. But if you have any questions about any of this, or if you would specifically like to see your situation played out in the same way that I've played out for Mark and Mary here, more than happy to do so. So reach out to me in the details below. But I hope you all have a great day, and thanks for your support.